Well, good morning. Excuse me. So I want to jump right in. First, good to be back. I haven't been here in a couple of weeks. I've been at the last 2 weeks, I've been at our Mount Laurel campus, and so it's nice to see you guys. Now, in Mount Laurel, you only preach one service because there's only one service. You only preach once. So I've already done this, so I'm a little tired now, right? So you have to get me through this. Not just the Dickinson family, all of you need to get me through this, all right? Because I'm going to preach twice today. I'm going to need a nap when we're done. So we're midway through a series this morning. We're midway through a series called The Power of a Dream. It's an Old Testament story that begins with a dream and it ends with the dream being fulfilled. I want to go over all that with you that we've talked about already, but if you missed it, encourage you to check out the podcast. But this is a centuries-old story that still applies today. There is so much drama. There's so much dysfunction in this family. There's so much intrigue in this story that this story could be made into a Lifetime movie. So it's that kind of stuff. It's great. I encourage you to read it. It's chapters 37 through 50 in the book of Genesis. And it's filled with some great stuff. So I said it's a great story. A little bit of background for you. Joseph was sold by his brothers to some foreign traders, and then after a 200-mile journey to Egypt, he was sold again to Potiphar. We're going to meet Potiphar in just a moment. Potiphar is an Egyptian officer. Specifically, Potiphar is the captain of the guard for Pharaoh, and we'll talk about that in a minute as well. And Joseph becomes a slave in Potiphar's house. So I want to read to you up on the screen. It's from Genesis chapter 39, and beginning with verse 2, it says this: "The Lord was with Joseph, so he succeeded in everything he did as he served in the home of his Egyptian master." Now we're going to see in just this short paragraph that Joseph receives 3 job promotions in his time in Potiphar's house. Right there it begins with that he served in the home. Then in verse 3, Potiphar noticed this. Noticed that Joseph succeeded in everything he did, that Joseph was just good at what he did. Potiphar noticed this and realized that the Lord was with Joseph, giving him success in everything he did. This pleased Potiphar, so he soon made Potiphar his personal attendant. So there he gets a job promotion soon afterward, and he becomes his personal attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his entire household and everything he owned. From the day Joseph was put in charge of his master's household and property, the Lord began to bless Potiphar's household for Joseph's sake. All his household affairs ran smoothly, and his crops and livestock flourished. So Potiphar gave Joseph complete administrative responsibility, another job promotion. He now has complete administrative responsibility over everything that Potiphar owns. So he went from being a household servant to being the personal assistant to now having responsibility for all areas of Potiphar's life. With Joseph there, Potiphar didn't worry about a thing except what food to eat. All Potiphar had to worry about, since Joseph came to be part of his household, was what's for dinner. That's how much Joseph means to Potiphar. And there's a statement there that is important. It says, Potiphar noticed this and realized that the Lord was with Joseph. Now, some background on Potiphar. Potiphar is Egyptian, right? He's a highly trusted member of Pharaoh's inner circle. He's either the head of Pharaoh's security, he's either the Secret Service, the head of Pharaoh's security, or he's the chief of police of all of Egypt. We're not really sure what the Hebrew means there, but he has a high position of authority, and it involves he's either head of security or he's head of the chief of police. His name, his Potiphar, means devoted to the sun, S-U-N. And so Potiphar is a religious man who worships Egyptian gods, and there were many of them. And Pharaoh in ancient times, the pharaohs were considered to be a god themselves. And so this statement that the writer of Genesis makes is really important. It says that Potiphar noticed how Joseph was living, and realized that the Lord was with Joseph. This is a big deal. Potiphar, a member of Egyptian culture, notices Joseph lives differently. That Joseph's life was unique. That Joseph worked hard. That Joseph worked well. That he was successfully living in this foreign culture. And Joseph was moving up in the ranks within Potiphar's house. And Potiphar attributed Joseph's lifestyle and the way of living that Joseph was demonstrating, he attributes this to Joseph's faith. He said says that he realized that the Lord was with Joseph. That he has faith in a God that Potiphar didn't believe in, and faith in a God that Potiphar did not worship personally. So the first takeaway that I noticed as I'm reading chapter 39 is that how you and I choose to live matters. That how we live matters. That people who are far from God will notice how we live. How we handle mishaps in life. How we handle harm. How we handle evil. That people will notice how we live when the test comes back positive. Or when work doesn't go as planned. That people will notice how we respond to gossip at work. That people will notice how we respond to those things that are being talked about behind closed doors. That people will notice. That people will notice how we live when the road ahead is filled with setbacks and trouble and concern. And if we live out our faith, it will be noticed by the people above us and around us. So Potiphar, because of what he saw in Joseph's life, put increasing amounts of trust into Joseph. And so people are watching us. People are watching how we live life. They're watching our values, they're watching our character, and they're watching our integrity. Our values, our character, and our integrity. And I want to talk about those three things because they kind of play into the next part of the story, and it's really important. But I want to note that values and character integrity are not all the same thing. They're different. They work together, but they're different. So let me just do through some quick definitions as a way of background before we go into the rest of the story. So our values are those things that we consider important. That seems pretty obvious, right? Values are things that we would think are important. So, values can be good values or they can be bad values. They can be healthy values or they can be unhealthy values. But we all value something. So some of us, you could say that maybe you value family vacation. So it's really important for you that your family gets away on vacation and spends time together. So you value family vacation. So you set aside a portion of your income to make sure that your family can be together for a family vacation. That's maybe a value you have. Maybe you value healthy eating. Maybe you value financial success, or maybe your goal, which becomes a value, is that you're going to retire early. That's a value that you would have. Other values could be things like honesty or trustworthiness, or maybe just family in general, that we value family. But we all have values. We all have things that we would find important in life, and we would say that nothing else is important as these things. And so they become our values. Now, sometimes, like I said, they can be healthy, they can be unhealthy, they can be good, or they can be bad. One time, this was almost a decade ago, maybe longer, I was officiating at a funeral, and it was a family that I did not know. And there are times where a funeral director will call and they'll ask, is there a pastor who could do the funeral for this family? They don't have any church connection. And so I agreed to do this funeral. And so you get the number and you call up the family and you speak and get to know the family a little bit and get to know the person who has deceased. And so I called and I said to two sons, and I said, tell me about your dad. And I said, what was important to him? And they said, well, he loved golf. I said, great. What else? Well, he had several golf memberships. And they started naming the places that he had golf memberships. I'm like, okay, you got to give me more than golf, right? What else? He one time got a hole-in-one. I'm like, give me something else, right? And so I had to get them, but golf was important. They had his golf bag next to the coffin. Now, what do you think this gentleman valued? Golf, right? That was definitely one of his values, right? I'm not saying it's healthy or unhealthy, but he valued golf. All right, so values are those things that we find important, okay? We all have them. Character is who we are. Character is who we are, a person's learned and unlearned attributes. As a matter of fact, the word character comes from the root word meaning to engrave. And so character are those things that are engraved on our heart. Character is the things that are engraved on our heart or on our life. Character also can be good or bad, and it can be healthy or unhealthy. So we have values, those things that are important. Character is who we are. And then integrity is the consistency between our word and our deed. So what we say and whether we choose to do it. It comes from the Latin word meaning whole or right, but it also can mean intact. So for instance, when a building, you engineers out there, you'll like this. When a building is being built, we say it has structural integrity, right? Structural integrity. We're saying that this building can handle the pressures from outside and it will be able to stand firm. And so for someone who has integrity in their life, their word and their deed will match or it will be intact. So value is important. Values is what's important. Character is who you are. Integrity is do your values and your characters match. So for instance, honesty would be a value. And character, your character could be, I am truthful always. And then integrity is when pressure comes on, are you truthful? If so, then your words and your deeds match and you have integrity, okay? Now, there's another interesting thing about values and character and integrity is that we can teach values. So we do that with our kids, right? When our kids are younger, we taught them that honesty is the best policy, right? Honesty is the best policy, and we would also say to our kids that we want you to be honest with mom and dad, even if we don't like what you did. We want honesty first, right? Because honesty is what's most important, right? That's a value. So honesty is the best policy. So we teach values, but we grow character, all right? You teach values, you can't teach character. You teach values, and then you grow character. So as our children grow up, as your children grew up, they practiced honesty because mom and dad told them that that's a value. Honesty is the best policy, and they practiced it. And as they practiced honesty, they would discover that, oh, it's the best policy. And so that would grow, and it would begin to be engraved on their heart. All right, so that's our values. So we teach values, we grow character, but we build integrity. So as circumstances test and prove our values and our character, we begin to build our integrity. So when there are difficult circumstances and the way of escape is possibly to be dishonest, honesty is the best policy. It's engraved on my heart, but now I'm experiencing pressure. And the pressure, possibly to get out of the pressure, is to be dishonest. If I am, my integrity has failed, right? If I don't, my integrity is intact, okay? So it's values, character, integrity. We teach values, we grow character, we build integrity. Now, the best example with this, I just spent 10 minutes talking about this. The best example of this was a young lady who was on Twitter and in the news this week. She's in high school. She's a senior in high school. She's 17 years old. Her name is Kate Wynja, W-Y-N-J-A. I think it's Wynja. She's a senior on a golf team at Sioux Falls Christian School in South Dakota, and she and her high school golf team had won the state golf meet by several strokes earlier in the week. Now, several strokes is an important piece. She won the individual championship, and her team won the team championship. But then, as the final scores were being posted, Kate realized that she had made a mistake. Anybody see this in the news? She realized she had made a mistake. She put herself down with a 4 on the 18th hole, but she had actually scored a 5. She realized that she had signed her card with a 4 instead of a 5. Now, she won by more than one stroke. She won by several strokes. The team won by several strokes. One stroke does not change the outcome, except it does. Because she had signed the card, the rules say that she's disqualified. And so it cost her the individual title, and it also cost her team the school's team title. Now, a reporter asked her afterward. She went up to the scorekeeper and said, I signed the wrong card, knowing what would happen. And the reporter asked her, why did you do it? And she said this, I needed to tell them. I needed to, she said. It was really sad, mostly because I knew what the result would be. She knew the outcome. I knew that I would be disqualified, and it broke my heart. But I knew I couldn't leave without saying something. No one else knew but Kate. But her value was honesty. And her character said it was written on her heart, tell the truth. And when the pressure came upon her, she had integrity. I started following her on Twitter. Not because she's a good golfer, but because this is the kind of person who could change the world. She said this on Twitter the very same day. It's up on the screen. Obviously, today didn't go as planned. But God has a plan and uses tough situations for his glory. Blessed with the ability to play golf and play for the glory of God. Thanks for all the love and support. Jack Nicklaus found that. He retweeted it. And he said, this is the kind of person we need in golf. And I said, oh, Jack, I should have done this. Oh, Jack, this is the kind of person we need in our world, right? She knew her value is honesty. It's etched on her heart. And when the pressure came, she did what was right. People are now noticing how Kate lives. Not her golf game, but they're noticing her values and her character and integrity. All right, so all of that's some background for this next part of the story. We don't know exactly how much time passed between chapter 37 in Genesis and chapter 39, but in between there, it seems that Joseph has been growing. See, in chapter 37, Joseph is 17 years old, and he seems arrogant, and he's growing up in a dysfunctional family, and the values that he's been taught likely include favoritism and arrogance and jealousy, among other things. That's the best we can say about Joseph. And in his family, in chapter 37, as it ends, we find that he's been mob attacked by his brothers. He's been thrown into a cistern. He's been sold as a slave by his brothers. He's had to travel 200 miles as a slave, was sold again in Egypt, and now he's in Potiphar's house, and he begins to demonstrate in chapter 39 values. And he begins to grow character, and he begins to build his integrity. And so up on the screen it says this, beginning with verse 6. Joseph was a very handsome and well-built young man. Man, I remember those days. You know, the last service laughed a lot harder. I appreciate that. You guys see some truth in that, I guess. He was a very handsome and well-built young man. And Potiphar's wife, notice that as well, soon began to look at him lustfully. And she doesn't mix words. Come and sleep with me, she demanded. Mom and Dad, we're going to get PG-13 here. But Joseph refused. Look, he told her, my master trusts me with everything in his entire household. No one here has more authority than I do. He has held back nothing from me except you because you are his wife. How could I do such a wicked thing? It would be a great sin against God. She doesn't take no for an answer. She kept putting pressure on Joseph day after day, but he refused to sleep with her, and he kept out of her way as much as possible. One day, however, no one else was around when he went in to do his work. She came and grabbed him by his cloak. Come on, sleep with me. Joseph tore himself away, but he left his cloak in her hand as he ran from the house. And so Joseph's values are based on his faith in God. His character, his trust and loyalty. He says to her, my master trusts me with everything except you. Everything is under my authority except for you. What you're suggesting is wicked. It would be a great sin against God. And so Joseph runs. He is gripped and he runs. He runs so fast he can't even keep his coat. And this is the second time he's lost his coat. Right? He's like one of my kids. He can't keep his coat. He runs out without his coat, but he keeps his integrity. Now, the Apostle Paul tells us what Joseph must have known. It's up on the screen. It's in the New Testament, Ephesians chapter 5. It says this, "But among you," talking to the young church there must not be even a hint of sexual immorality or of any kind of impurity or of greed, because these are improper for God's people. The NIV version says there should not even be a hint. Not even a hint. Now, why would Paul say that? What did Joseph know? It's a slippery slope. Not just sexual sin, but all sin is a slippery slope, and just a hint of it leads to death. I mean, how do brothers who are jealous end up wanting to kill their brother? One step at a time. And so what seems like something simple, they're just complaining about that guy at work. We just chat about that. No, there's no one else to talk about, so we talk about him. It seems so subtle. But yet Paul says even a hint of that will cause harm. The Message version says that it'll set you off on a downhill slide. A downhill slide. Sin is harmful, it's sin, and it kills. And so Joseph runs. He runs right out the door. She's left with his coat in her hands. Now get this. Joseph didn't need to run. I mean, he's got a good job. It was turning into a career. He had power and resources at his disposal. And he may have even thought, God, the dream is finally coming true. What you said would happen is beginning to happen. If we were reading this story for the first time and don't know the rest of the story, we would be thinking things are going quite well. Potiphar trusts him with everything. Potiphar seems to be somewhere else. Who would ever know what happened next? And so let's just take this opportunity to slip. But he would have sacrificed his integrity. He would have kept his coat, but would have lost his integrity. And so sin is a slippery slope. And if we sacrifice our integrity to accomplish the dream, what have we gained? Joseph did the right thing in this circumstance. He ran. And so up on the screen, he did the right thing. He did the right thing. And let's see what happens. When she saw that she was holding his cloak and he had fled, she called out to her servants. Soon all the men came running. I wonder how many of those men she had also tried this trick with. Look, she said, my husband has brought this Hebrew slave here to make fools of us. He came into my room to rape me, but I screamed. When he heard me scream, he ran outside and got away, but he left his cloak behind with me. She kept the cloak with her until her husband came home, and then she told him her story. That Hebrew slave you've brought into our house tried to come in and fool around with me. But when I screamed, he ran outside, leaving his cloak with me. And so Joseph ran out. He did the right thing. But doing the right thing does not assure a positive response. You can do the right thing and lose a golf tournament. You can do the right thing and not get the promotion at work. You can do the right thing and your family may not speak to you. Doing the right thing, though, means that your values and your character and your integrity will not be sacrificed for anybody's dream, even yours. Doing the right thing means that you will trust God in your circumstance. Doing the right thing does not assure a positive response. Verse 19, we see what happens. So Potiphar was furious when he heard his wife's story about how Joseph had treated her. So he took Joseph and threw him into the prison where the king's prisoners were held, and there he remained. The pathway to the fulfillment of the dreams is not always the pathway that we assume. Often, our pathways are filled with ups and downs and trials and challenges and errors. And Joseph, as he moved up the ranks in Potiphar's home, surely imagined that he had arrived. Or even, could it get any better than this? He probably thought. This is better than even the dream I had had. But now he's in prison. Now he's been falsely accused. Doing the right thing does not promise a positive response. Now again, if the reader was hearing this story for the first time, we would believe that the dream is dead. Joseph's now in prison. He also may have been believing the dream is dead. How could this be happening to me? But Joseph had no idea that his journey involved a cistern and slavery and 200-mile journey to Egypt, that he would be falsely accused and imprisoned. In Joseph's perspective, and any first-time reader's perspective here in this story, the dream is surely dead. And so I had this question I wrote down in my notes. How many times was I one step away from the dream and I quit? How many times I thought that the pit, I thought that the imprisonment, I thought that the failure, the thing that didn't happen the way I expected it to happen, I thought that was the end of the dream. But quite possibly, it was part of the dream that God had for me. See, there's a theme that runs throughout the story of Joseph. It's this verse up on the screen. Whenever Joseph is at his lowest, this appears every time. But the Lord was with Joseph. The Lord was with Joseph in the prison and showed him his faithful love. See, we know the end of the story. But if Joseph had quit, what if Joseph had quit when he was sold into slavery? What if he had quit on God and quit on his values and quit on his character and quit on his integrity? What if he had slept with Potiphar's wife and gave up on the dream? Yes, he may have never been caught, but he would have lost everything. See, we know the end of the story. We know all Joseph would have missed. We know how the dream is going to turn out. But your circumstance is not a dead end to the dream. Wherever you are, whatever's going on, your circumstance is not a dead end to the dream. Christine Caine said this, it's up on the screen. Sometimes when you're in a dark place, you think you've been buried, but actually you've been planted. That's a tweetable moment right there. See, we don't know the end of our story. We don't know the end of our stories. Our stories are still being written. We don't know all of the story that God is writing about you and me. And we don't know all of the story God is writing about hope and this community. Don't quit in the middle of the story. Don't quit in the middle of the story. Your circumstance is not a dead end to the dream. And so instead, I would challenge you in that situation, wherever it is you are, to ask this question: what's the next thing? What's the next right thing I need to do to accomplish the dream? Not being concerned with how it turns out, but what is the next right thing I need to do? You may be only one step away. So maybe it's your marriage. Maybe right now your marriage is struggling. It's not the dream you imagined it could be. Maybe you've just fallen out of love. Maybe things are just not like they used to be. Something has slipped. I would challenge you to dream again. God wants to turn that dream into a vision and into reality. Maybe it's about your kids or your family, and maybe it's about redeveloping or reestablishing healthy relationships, about connecting your family to God so that you can say that you're relationally well off. Maybe it's about your career and you're wondering what it could be or wondering what happened to it. Maybe one job is ending and you're wondering when or where will the next one start. Or maybe it's about your health or about your future. You may be one step from the dream being realized. Your circumstance is not a dead end to the dream. Don't sacrifice your integrity for the dream. Do the next right thing. At our campus in Mount Laurel, we are a small but powerful force. That's how I describe us in this way. We are creating and causing influence outside of Voorhees. There are people who are hearing about Hope Church and hearing about Jesus who would not have heard about Hope Church if we did not have our campus in Mount Laurel. And so we're always looking for what dream, God, where are you at in the stream? What's the next thing for us? And so I shared this with our Mount Laurel campus last week that we were talking, Chris Graves and I were talking about is it possible that we could do a vacation Bible school in Mount Laurel? And we don't have a building, and so we rent a school, and so that would be challenging. And so we started thinking, where could we do a vacation Bible school? And we have this great partnership with Chick-fil-A. We've done a lot of different things with the Chick-fil-A in Mount Laurel. And I think I said it. Maybe we'll give Chris the credit. Chris said, what if we did Chick-fil-A? What if we did vacation Bible school at Chick-fil-A? And I went, that's a funny idea. Let's go ask them. Well, we need to come up with a better way to say it than that. And so we put a plan together, and we said, let's go talk to them. So sure enough, we met with them, and while we were there, we said, hey, we'd love to do a vacation Bible school type event. What if you invited people to come in, they bought dinner, and we did vacation Bible school type event with their family? And they said yes. And so they then they took this idea and went crazy with it. And they were going, well, we'll invite all these people. We'll put it on our Facebook page. And everybody likes Chick-fil-A, right? They're like, woo, Chick-fil-A, right? And so we started a brainstorming, and we came up with, what if we did 6 different weeks where we had one night a week, we just invited families to come in, and they said, we'll bring in extra servers, and we'll serve the families at their seat, so that you can spend more time talking to the families and doing the craft and doing all the things. And I'm like, that's great. Well, this was like a home run, and so I always think you keep going until someone says no. That's how I did it growing up as a kid, and it worked fine. And so I thought we were going to do the same thing. So while we're there, I went, let's pitch another idea. And now this is totally open field running. I'm making this up as I go along. I said, well, what do you guys do at Christmas time? I said, we do this event at our Voorhees campus where we have gingerbread houses, and we have Santa come, and we do a tree lighting, and we get lots and lots of people. Do you do anything like that? And they said, well, we have Santa come, but it's just kind of Santa shows up. It's not. And I said, well, what if we had gingerbread houses so the families could build their gingerbread house, and then Santa could come, and we'd do this whole thing, and we'd have music and everything. And they went, that's a great idea. And we went, yes, it is. We'll do it. And Chris went, what? And I said, no, we will. And then we found out they have 2 stores. Could you do it twice? Yes, we can. Now, here's what's interesting. That never would have happened. It wasn't part of the dream when we first launched this campus. But look at the influence that we're going to have. Our influence is expanding. You may be one step away or even several, but will you trust God and do the next right thing? See, the brothers treated Joseph like dirt, and Potiphar treated him like property. Potiphar's wife treated him like an object for her own pleasure, but God was building a dream in Joseph. And God is building a dream in you. Josh and Steve are going to come up, and they're going to sing a song for us, and the lyrics will be up on the screen. I want to share with you just an interview that I saw with the writer of this song, and he said this. The whole point of the song for me, the whole point of the song they're about to sing, is the change that Jesus made in my life is so real and so life-transforming that if God went dark, if God went silent in my life, he would still be the greatest hope because of what he's already done. So basically, there's not a single circumstance that can derail me from what Christ is to me and who I am because of Christ. So your circumstance is not a dead end to the dream. Don't quit on the dream. You may be one step away.